you can already tell the dissatisfaction among many inside the states at the Biden's administration's response, that the language was harsh in that they were shocked. They said they were shocked, the Biden administration, over her killing, but that they were waiting for the Israelis, or pressuring rather the Israelis, to investigate, and will await the results. So a lot of people seeing that as lip service, of course. The specifics of how this went down is still being debated a bit.
Now, an estimated 750,000 Israelis have taken to the streets in protest, demanding that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu strike a deal to free the remaining captives in Gaza. More than 100 captives still remain in Gaza, but a third of them are believed to be dead, according to the Israeli military. Now, this is one of Israel's biggest ever protests. Joining us now is Zach Anders, journalist based in Tel Aviv. Zach, can you hear us?
Hi, good evening.
Zach, thank you so much for giving us your time. Can you give us a picture of what's going on at the moment with the protests? We've been covering this on the show for the last months and months as the protests have been going on. They seem to be getting bigger, they seem to be getting more vociferous, and they seem to be demanding a change at the top.
And that's a really good way to put it, because it has been months and months and months that these protests have been taking place in large numbers in the streets. The call for a hostage deal now has been largely unchanged. It's not like the chants are any different. The policy that this crowd is pushing for is the same. Agree to a deal, get the hostages home. That should be priority number one. You see Netanyahu saying, no, priority number one is a total elimination of Hamas, and closing off the Philadelphia corridor is the way of doing that. Last night was certainly a different tenor in the crowd. 500,000 people, the organizers say, were in Tel Aviv. Just massive, absolutely massive. I think one of the key things here, though, as you see some of these images, is that we're in 11 months of this conflict now, and these protests have been shutting down the roads, have been marching through the streets, and there have not been large, direct clashes or confrontations with police. There haven't been heavy-handed tactics. Largely, by my understanding, is because the police here in Israel are sympathetic to the causes that the people are in the streets for. Obviously, this isn't like the protests we saw in Israel when it was the election reform and the Supreme Court reform, where there were heavy clashes with police. This is much different. So you can have 500,000 people there, and the police don't make an effort to try and disperse the crowd.
Zach, I know that you are currently on your way to the Jordan border. It's been reported that 3 civilians have been killed at the crossing between occupied West Bank and Jordan this morning. What can you tell us?
This, by all accounts, appears to be a Jordanian truck driver that was in one of the vehicles that stopped at the border crossing and then opened fire. We don't know much more other than this is a Jordanian national. There are 3 dead. They are Israelis that are dead at this checkpoint. And now the border is shut down between Israel and Jordan. And this border in particular, or these crossings, have been slipping beneath the headlines, but they're rather important. And if you zoom out at the regional scale of why these borders are important, it's because the sea lanes, the shipping lanes, the Houthis have obviously been successful in closing off many of the routes that some of this commercial cargo and traffic would make on its way to Israel. So in some instances, that is coming through land crossings and coming through Jordan. It's also a key point for some of this aid that Jordan is sending into Gaza as being made by truck through these crossings as well, and this crossing in particular. So it's going to be a major disruption for however long this crossing is closed, and by our understanding, remains closed now some 5-6 hours on.
Zach, sticking with the West Bank, the United Nations have been calling for a full investigation into killing of a US-Turkish woman in the occupied West Bank during a protest on Friday. What has the Israeli military said about this killing?
You know, this is going to probably look a lot like when Shireen Abu Akleh, the Al Jazeera journalist, was killed. The IDF stonewalling investigation efforts, saying obviously that this is under review, but largely they believe it was not them. But then again, you know, how many people are out there firing bullets in the West Bank towards these crowds in the opposite direction? of the IDF soldiers who are standing guard at some of these positions. This is going to likely lead to a large effort from the American end to try and get an investigation in place and seek more information. But you can already tell the dissatisfaction among many inside the states at the Biden's administration's response, that the language was harsh in that they were shocked. They said they were shocked, the Biden administration, over her killing, but that they were waiting for the Israelis, or pressuring rather the Israelis, to investigate, and will await the results. So a lot of people seeing that as lip service, of course. The specifics of how this went down is still being debated a bit. This woman herself is actually a close friend of one of my very close friends. We're both from the same area of Seattle. So I've been in connection with the friends around the family network. And of course, the family is just absolutely horrified. But one of the elements that they're speaking about is that she just graduated from the University of Washington in Seattle just a few months ago. And as she walked across the stage, she had a flag that said "Free Palestine." And there's a lot of chatter within, and I should say this is nothing official, no sourcing, but just something that I hear quite frequently is that Israel has been putting in a concerted effort into knowing the past of these people who are coming through Ben Gurion Airport. They're tracking the protesters that have been involved in these protests abroad internationally, and when they travel through Ben Gurion Airport in Israel, they're flagged. So the big question that we're working to try and understand is there any mechanism within the Israeli government that knows who she was and knows that she traveled into the West Bank, into this area? Was she flagged somewhere? Was she present to the Israeli government? What did they know leading up to her killing?
Well, Zach, when you do, and if you do find out, do please come back to the show and let us know what you have found. Zach Anders, journalist based in Tel Aviv, talking to me as he's on his way to the West Bank Jordanian border.
Is Benjamin Netanyahu in danger of losing his grip on power? The discovery of the hostages has led to anger and frustration aimed at the Israeli government and its failure to secure the release of the remaining captives. Here is Netanyahu speaking at a live press conference last Wednesday.
I'm willing to make a deal. I made one already. One that brought back 150 hostages, 117 alive, and I'm committed to return the remaining 101. I'll do everything I can to get them in. But leaving Philadelphia does not advance the release of the hostages, because the deal cannot be advanced. They'll give you a minor part, if they give anything. Keep the rest. Go and argue. You know when they started giving us hostages? When we went into Philadelphia, when we went into Rafah, when we controlled the Rafah crossing. That's when they felt the pressure. As long as they didn't feel the pressure, they wouldn't do it.